What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC. We have right here on the line a very special guest. He is one of the most prominent names in all of combat sports, a legendary commentator, one of the voices of one championship, and now he's adding another job title to his already impressive resume, author. We're talking to the great, the voice, Michael Schiavello. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. How's everything going?
Fred, it's great, mate, particularly after that brilliant introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, I have to live up to the high standards. I'm talking to the freaking voice here. Now, I obviously want to get to everything that's going on with one championship, your decorated career, but you have a major release that's out right now that people can check out, a major project you've been talking about, and I think my audience would love to hear about it, The Commentators. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Yeah, this is a book I've been working on for pretty much the last year, and it's just come out. You can buy it worldwide on bookdepository.com. It's called The Commentators. It celebrates 100 years of the profession of sports commentary. I found out, Fred, that the first ever live sports commentary was done on radio on April 11, 1921 by a guy called Florent Gibson when he commentated a boxing fight. Now, Florent Gibson was a journalist from the Pittsburgh Journal, I think it was, the Pittsburgh Post in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. And he attended this boxing match, and he had an old telephone, and that's how he called the fights live on radio for the first time. And later on, many years later, he recalled that the telephone was covered in blood, and he gave what he called a play-by-play of the action. So that's where sports commentary is born. So this year, we're actually celebrating 100 years of the soundtrack of our lives. And the book, The Commentators, looks at over 60 different sports events and the men and women behind those events who are commentating them. And I mean, every sport you can think of, from soccer to mixed martial arts to boxing, cricket, rugby, World Series, Super Bowl, darts, Formula One, they're all in there. I cover all the sports and all the commentators.
Now, is it just a historical overview, or do you actually do some interviews with some of the commentators that were involved with these legendary calls?
I also have a list of contributing commentators in there that is, bar none, the best group of commentators ever assembled. I've got the man the American Sportscasters Association voted or named the #1 sports announcer of all time, Vin Scully. At 94 years old, Vin is a contributor to the book. Here's the guy who President Obama awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here's the guy who Dana Scully of the X-Files was named Scully because of Vin Scully. He's in the book. Kathy Rigby, the great US Olympian, 18-year veteran on ABC Sports, Tony Award-nominated actress, is contributor to the book. Tim Neverett, who is a commentator for the LA Dodgers, he commentated into the World Series win last year. He's a contributor to the book. So a lot of the world's best commentators are featured in and do contribute to the book. And some of their stories and their advice is just phenomenal.
You mentioned Vin Scully. For those that don't know, I mean, that guy is legendary. I mean, you pretty much listed his resume right there. I mean, such an iconic broadcaster. How did this all come about? What made you wake up and say, you know what, not only do I want to write a book on the history of commentating, which is a cool subject, but something that's normally not at the top of mind of people, but also link up with some of these legends?
You know what? I think when I'm doing anything, I want to do it the best as I possibly can. If I'm going to interview someone, I want to get the biggest name. If I'm going to write about something, I want to get the biggest name involved. If I was doing a book on basketball, I'd want to interview Michael Jordan and have him involved. If I was doing a book on hockey, I'd want Wayne Gretzky. I'm doing a book on commentators. I want the #1 guy in history. I reached out to Vin Scully, spoke to him and his people about the book and the idea for the book, and they came back and said, we'd love to be a part of it. And I'm so thrilled and honored that, as I said, at 94 years old, it does not get any more legendary. I mean, Dodgers Stadium in LA is on Vin Scully Avenue. The guy has his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That doesn't happen in the commentary world, but it happens to Vin Scully. So to have him contribute to the book, and I do have a whole chapter about Vin in the book. And Fred, I believe that the only perfect commentary I've ever heard, you see, no commentator, Fred, will ever tell you they've done a perfect commentary. We'll always say our perfect call is still out there because, you know, it's like any artist. You listen back to your work, you watch your work, you could always do something better. And in the book, I say there's only one man who's ever done one perfect commentary. It was Vin Scully, commentating Sandy Koufax's perfect game in 1965, where it went for a whole innings of 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Vin Scully spoke 1,064 words of what is sheer commentary perfection. And again, I'm so thrilled that I interviewed him for the book, and he talks about that specific commentary and what he did that made it so memorable, so historic. And for me, as I said, the only perfect call in sports history.
Vin Scully is absolutely legendary. He is definitely the GOAT. You're not so bad yourself, though. In the process of making this book and working with these contributors like the legendary Vin Scully, did you learn a thing or two about commentary that after 30 years you discovered and were like, holy crap, how did this not come to mind before?
100%. And this is the other good thing. The other commentators who are in the book, and they've received their copies now of the book. I mean, guys like John Murray from the BBC in the UK, who's the number one guy in the UK on BBC, he learned so much from the book. And he said, I've been a commentator for 30 years and I didn't know what was involved with some of this stuff. For myself, for my own one championship commentary, I learned from guys like Vin Scully, Tom Durkin, the great racehorse caller from the USA, Tim Neverett from the LA Dodgers, Keith Quinn, a 10-time Olympic Games commentator, Bruce Breslow, a 10-time Olympic Games commentator. I've learned so much as well just talking to these guys and seeing what they do in their commentary process that now I'm starting to bring some of that into mine. I got some tips and stuff off Vin Scully and watching Vin Scully's commentaries that now I'm incorporating into my own work. And I think that's what any good artist does, is they look at other artists and they go, I like that. That works. I'm not going to copy it. I'm not going to plagiarize it, but I'm going to bring that aspect into my own work to elevate my own work. And it's one of the beautiful things about the book that if you are interested in commentary, if you're interested in broadcasting, this is the book to read. And I can't reveal what college yet, but a very prominent East Coast college in America who's had some very famous alumni is actually going to put the book on its curriculum for its students later this year, the students that are doing sports broadcasting. So I'm thrilled with that.
Super happy for your success. We have a lot of mutual friends. A lot of them have always spoken very highly of you, and I'm sure the book is freaking awesome. I didn't get a chance to dive in yet because I wanted to come in with the fresh mind, and man, you got me even more hyped for it. Now, as far as your commentary journey, a lot of people right now know you from One Championship. Folks, if you're not familiar with One Championship, they're only the biggest MMA promotion, I should say combat sports promotion in the entire continent of Asia, and that's not putting it lightly. But before then, of course, you've done other MMA, you've done kickboxing, you've done multiple sports before. You've been doing this for, what, about 30 years now?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, 30 years on the dot. My first commentary I ever did was in 1991. So 30 years this year. Wow. I started commentating fight sports 1994. So in 27 years, I've been doing fight sports. I remember my first kickboxing commentary was 1994. And Fred, it was a local promoter here in Melbourne that asked me to commentate his kickboxing fights for him, his kickboxing show, because he'd heard me on radio commentate soccer. And he liked my enthusiasm and my passion. And I knocked him back and I said, mate, I can't commentate kickboxing. I don't know enough about it. I have never done it. I'm not confident. He begged and he begged and he begged. And he said, I think you've got a talent for it. It might lead somewhere. It might not, but you'll have fun. I'm so glad, Fred, that I did it. And I had a talent for it. Other promoters recognized that. And when pay TV came to Australia a few years later in 1996, Fox Sports contacted me and said, hey, we want you to commentate for us. I was 21, 22 years old. And I'm like, on national TV all of a sudden. So, I'm very blessed to have been given the opportunities, but also, Fred, it's a really important piece of advice I give people: never knock back an opportunity. Always say you'll do something. And if you don't know how to do it, say yes, go away, study like crazy, and then come back and do it. And in the book, there's a great example from Bruce Breslow, who has commentated 10 Olympic Games. He's in the Nevada Sportscasters Hall of Fame. Bruce was offered the handball gig in 1984 at the LA Olympics, and he knocked it back originally because he didn't know anything about handball. But then he thought, this is the only way I can get to commentate the Olympic Games. So he went to the library. He found the only book that was there about handball. He checked it out. He read the thing cover to cover 4 or 5 times until he knew it better than the Bible. And he went and he commentated the 1984 Olympics handball games like an expert. And from that year on, every Olympic Games since 84, they've called Bruce Breslow back to commentate across all sports. He commentated the Dream Team basketball in 1992. He just got back from doing the Tokyo Olympics. I mean, it all started because he bit off more than he could chew, and he chewed like crazy, and he believed in himself. So it's my advice for everybody.
That's some fantastic advice. Now, did you always kind of dream about being a broadcaster or getting into TV in some sort, or did you kind of stumble upon it?
No, never. You know, when I was growing up, Fred, I wanted to be an architect. I don't know why. I just enjoyed drawing. I liked drawing houses. I thought it was cool to be an architect. And when it came time to do work experience or an internship in when you're 15, 16 years old in Australia, I wrote away to architecture firms, 20 of them. Didn't get one response. Not one, not even a no. And I was in tears to my mum, crying. I remember this vividly. And my mum said, "You've got a good voice. Why don't you do radio?" And I'm like, "Radio? Really? No, I don't have a good voice. I don't want to do radio. Just do radio." She said, "Humor me." So I did. I wrote away to my favorite radio station. They wrote back straight away, said, "Yes, come on in." I went in there, Fred, and the lady from the station looked me up and down, and she said, "What do you want to do in radio?" And I'm thinking, I don't. I want to be an architect. I'm just here to humor my mum. So this lady said to me, her name was Deanne Sloan, and she said, "I've got a good feeling about you, Michael. I'll put you in the newsroom with our journalists." So I went in this newsroom, all these buttons and microphones, consoles, etc. And Fred, I fell in love with radio and broadcasting and media straight away. Every thought of being an architect went, and all I wanted to do was broadcast media.
Well, and you never attempted it like whatsoever. You weren't any AV club in high school, nothing. It just
Nope.
kind of got in cold, and you're like, "Oh my God, where have you been all my life?"
Mate, cold. I went in cold, and even the result of what you see today, I taught myself everything. There's no broadcasting degree, there's no college degree, diploma hanging on my wall. I've got a high school certificate. That's it. Everything else, writing, commentating, I taught myself over the years, and I'm still learning. Like I said, I'm learning from the guys I interviewed for my book. They've taught me so much, and these are lessons I believe you can't get at a broadcast school. These are important lessons. So I taught myself, and I hope that other people will also realize you don't necessarily need a diploma on the wall. You just need to get out there and have a lot of self-belief, have passion, enthusiasm, and most of all, make sure you're committed to hard work.
Spectacular advice. What an incredible journey. Your journey now has taken you in recent years to one championship. Now, back in the day when I first interned and then first got my first real TV gig, I was a part of Spike TV on a freelance basis. We worked on a feature on a little promotion called One FC. Years later, now known as One Championship. This year in recent months, it even aired on TNT. Massive social media following. Some of the legitimate best MMA fighters and combat sports athletes in general in the world, because of course they do kickboxing and Muay Thai as well. Man, how has your One Championship career been treating you so far?
It's been amazing. And you said there the little wrap up of where One has come from. I mean, 10-year anniversary this year, and to have gone from a very small startup organization to what it is now, broadcast to 154 countries. Nielsen rating, we peaked at 81 million viewers just on TV, over 6 billion views of our videos online over the last year. That's, again, Nielsen rated. I mean, it's incredible. One Championship, the whole team is just so passionate and enthusiastic, and they put their heart and soul into every bit they do. And it's an enormous company. I mean, you go to the One headquarters in Singapore, it's a massive, man. A whole floor overlooking Singapore, up on the 14th floor, hundreds of employees, and everyone's like a cog in a wheel, and every cog is so important, and everyone does their job to the best of their abilities. And, they know martial arts. It's run by Chatri, Sityodtong, who himself a martial artist, long-time former Muay Thai fighter, Harvard graduate, MBA, stunning businessman, formerly was employed on Wall Street, and knows business, knows martial arts. And that's important, that he knows how to treat martial artists, and he knows how to convey and how to present the martial arts business for a huge, global audience. And I think it's one of the best things about One Championship.
And would you say that's what separates One Championship and why they've sustained success for 10 years? Because you and I have both been a part of or worked with promotions that are, well, no longer here right now, or mere shells of their former selves. So what would you say is the one thing that has kept one championship going?
You know what it is? It's many things, but rolled into one, it's passion. Because when you work at one, whether you're a commentator, a producer, a director, the ladies answering the phones, okay, you're a fighter, you're a high up, whatever you are, it's the passion that the whole atmosphere of one instills in you. You are proud to work for one championship. You want to give your best to one championship. You're always looking to outperform yourself from the last show. You know, and the way that we meet every week, you know, production meetings, our whole team, we go through, you know, the storylines, the backgrounds, and the graphics, and you know how we're going to make each show and improve each show. It's just those details. It's so detail oriented that what you see, the final result you see on TV, is the result of so many months and hours of planning and dedication, and that's what I think sets one championship apart. It's just that passion that everyone in the organization has for their role, no matter how big or how small it is.
I got to ask you a hardcore MMA question as a hardcore MMA fan. Are you surprised to see Shinya Aoki still competing at a high level?
Yes, I am. I thought Shinya might have retired a while ago. I mean, I've commentated Shinya, I can't remember. First time might have been back in 2008, somewhere around there. And he was peaking back then, we thought. And then he had a bit of a slump in one championship. He lost the world title, you know, against Edward Folayang. He captured a world title back. He lost the world title against Christian Lee. And I thought after that, all right, you just lost against Christian Lee, who was still, you know, young at the time. It still is young. And wasn't the big name that Christian is now. And I thought maybe it's time for Shinya to hang it up. But man, then he comes back again. You know, you can't write him off. And it's almost like Shinya is experiencing this renaissance period. Like it's the Shinya of old. It's a killer Shinya Aoki we're seeing. He goes in there, no BS. It's like he goes in there to rip arms off, rip legs off, to tap you out and do so in a painful fashion. And this is the Shinya I enjoyed back in the dream days. We all grew up loving this Shinya Aoki. So, mate, you asked that question, and yes, I am still surprised that he's still here after so long, because in 2008, I wouldn't have thought I'd been commentating him in 2021. And after he lost to Christian Lee, I thought he was, you know, say goodnight, go quietly into retirement, but he's still going.
He is still going. It's pretty incredible. Do you remember whose arm he broke?
Yeah, it was Hirata.
Yeah,
I think it was his name, Hirata. Yeah, that was at the Dream versus Sengoku New Year's Eve Dynamite match. So team, which was great. And hopefully we can do it in the future with maybe one versus UFC, you know, one versus Bellator versus UFC. But it's when Sengoku and Dream put their two best teams together and they went head to head. And I believe that was the main event. And for those of you who haven't seen it, look on YouTube. Aoki puts, I'll call him Hirata, I may be wrong, but I'll call him Hirata, in a chicken wing. So arm behind the back, very painful. I can already feel the pain in my shoulder. And Hirata wouldn't tap out. So Aoki, being Aoki, you see it on the TV, tweaked it and broke his arm, and he broke it in a painful place. Breaking your arm here is bad, but breaking your arm here is horrid. He broke it there, and it was shocking. Then he flipped him off, gave him the double birds. It was epic, but hey, that's part of Aoki's character, man.
Was that up there with some of the wildest, craziest stuff?
Oh yeah,
sports?
You know, cement that position of Dream against Sengoku fighters to break the guy's arm was such a stamp of authority. Even though it was mean, it was just, man, it was awesome. One of many tremendous moments over a long career.
I first discovered you when you were doing commentary for HDNet, now known as Access TV, for K1, for Dream, for Showtime. I mean, literally everything under the sun, you were pretty much doing commentary for, usually with Mayhem Miller or Guy Mesger or Boss Runer, whoever they had at the time. And not saying you're not having fun now, but I think the reason a lot of people like myself became fans of your work and fans of the MMA that was broadcast at HDNet at the time was because you guys looked like you were having so much freaking fun. I mean, I remember there was a fight where Badr Hari knocked out Alistair Overeem, and you guys are just like marking out. And
yep.
I think those are usually the best broadcasts when the announcers themselves, the voices that are speaking directly to us, are having fun. I mean, can you just describe the amount of fun you had at that time? Not saying one's not awesome, but it was a special time because the UFC was still growing. MMA wasn't oversaturated in North America yet. It was still, I would say, an underground thing, but HDNet was kind of like a haven for the hardcore fans that lived on the forums like myself. I mean, can you just describe that awesome time in mixed martial arts?
it was a whole formula that we had that, look, when I was signed by HDNet, later Access TV, it was done through Mark Cuban himself. Cuban had heard me on one of the K1 broadcasts from back in 2008. He was up early in the morning, because it was broadcast live to America, 4 a.m, watching the show on HDNet. And I'd said something like, Semi Schultz has as much personality as a head of lettuce. And apparently, as the story goes, from what I was told, this made Cuban laugh. He rang Andrew Simon, who was the CEO of HDNet Fights at the time, and he said, hire this crazy Aussie. I want him. I got the offer from HDNet, moved to America, started working there. And the beauty with that was that I knew that Mark Cuban enjoyed that sort of wild side commentary that I was known for, pushing things to the limits. And HDNet didn't put any handcuffs on me. I pretty much could do whatever I wanted. I think maybe I got slapped over the wrist once. But otherwise, I got away with a lot because of my Australian accent and because of, there's a lot of conservatives in America and a lot of sensitivities in America. And there's stuff that I said that I was told later if I was American, I might have been fired for, that I got away with because I'm Australian. And I just didn't realize that you guys were so uptight about a lot of the stuff we joke about in Australia, and because of my accent, I could get away with a lot. And that sort of, I think, endeared a lot of fans to watching the broadcast, is that I didn't have too much of a barometer of a point that I couldn't go past. Case in point, Danny Manus, right? Danny Manus, when I commentated him, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew I was calling him my anus. Pat and I knew what we were doing, and we went for it. But the key to calling that one successfully was me not laughing, because the moment I laughed in the commentary, which I didn't, it would have been like, oh, they know what they're doing. It's all a big joke. But the fact that I didn't laugh meant that fans watching it thought, how is this commentator saying this legitimately and keeping a straight face? Everyone's rolling around the floor dying from laughter. So that's how I had to play it for those 2 fights we did against Chavez and against Boston Salmon. And again, you wouldn't get away with that on any other network. But HDNet didn't put those handcuffs on me. So I was able to deliver stuff like that. And it was such a fun time. And whoever I was working with, Pat Miletich, Guy Mezger, Bas Rutten, Frank Trigg, Mayhem Miller, whoever it was, we had fun together, and I got them in on the action too.
And you also had Inside MMA, which was known amongst hardcore fans as the first TV news magazine show covering mixed martial arts, and it was that wasn't really pressured by UFC. We had no commitment to UFC.
Yeah. But we gave a home and a voice to these fighters that you're now seeing in UFC. Guys like Kamaru Usman. We commentated him on HDNet back in I think it was the LFA days or wherever it was, RFA. Guys that you're seeing in UFC now, Brian Ortega. He was another one.
Douglas Lehman, MFC.
Douglas Lehman, MFC. Ortega from RFA. These guys had that early platform. The Black Beast, Derek Lewis was another one from LFA. So all these guys came through the HDNet system of fights we were broadcasting. So it's a shame that there's not that pathway anymore. Sure, you've got some of these regional promotions on UFC Fight Pass, which is great. But, just to have it on a network like HDNet was special, man. It was really special. So it's sad it's not there anymore.
We like to ask all our guests some kind of random rapid fire questions for the audience to get to know them better. Are you ready?
Go for it.
What's your favorite cheat meal or late night snack?
You know what? Late night snack is something called Vita Wheat. It's a cracker made of wheat, and I put Nutlex spread on it, which is like a nut butter. And then I put good old-fashioned Australian Vegemite. That's my favorite late night snack.
What's your most awkward commentary moment?
Wow, awkward. That's a tough one, Fred. That's a really tough one.
Awkward, embarrassing, crazy.
All right. Once back in the Fox Sports days in Australia, a friend of mine had stepped in to be the ring announcer on a show when the ring announcer pulled out last minute. So I was sort of coaching him during ad breaks while I was on air calling the fights. And one of the fighters had won the main event, and the other guy who had lost the main event, my friend was asking me in my headset, should I commentate the loser? And I said, without switching my microphone off properly, no, F him, he lost, interview the other guy. It came across just a little bit on air, so I was told if you turned up the volume, that was pretty embarrassing.
Oh, man. Hey, it happens to the best of us, man. A hot mic, a live mic can be your best friend, and it can definitely be your worst enemy. What would you say is your career-defining moment up to this point?
Olympic Games, 2008, to be a commentator who called the Olympics, went to Beijing, did the boxing, broadcast to 110 countries for the Asian Broadcasting Union. Just to have that on the resume, man, and be able to tell my kids, your daddy did an Olympic Games. It's something very few commentators do, and that's the pinnacle.
How'd you get the catchphrase, "Good night, Irene"?
Love of professional wrestling. Grew up loving professional wrestling since WrestleMania 1 beamed into my living room as a 10-year-old in 1985. Gorilla Monsoon was always my favorite, and Adrian Adonis was a favorite wrestler. And Adrian Adonis had a finishing move, a sleeper hold, that I heard Gorilla Monsoon call "Goodnight, Irene." That was the name of the sleeper hold. When I heard Monsoon say, Adrian, look at a slap on the "Goodnight, Irene," it sort of stuck. And, the strange coincidence, Fred, that years and years later, I would end up marrying a woman of all names named Irene.
Wow, that
freaky. And I started screaming "Goodnight, Irene" with that track and field commentary in 1991 when I was 15 or 16 years old. And when I'm 34 years old, I meet a girl named Irene who I end up marrying.
You mentioned pro wrestling. I'm, of course, a huge pro wrestling fan. We cover pro wrestling pretty extensively as well. Have you been keeping up with what's going on with WWE versus AEW?
I haven't too much. I've watched some AEW as well because my mate, Jim Ross, who's contributor also to the book, The Commentators. JR is a contributor to the book. Him and Tony Schiavone takes me back. Schiavone takes me back to the old WCW days. Yes. And, JR is just a legend. So I watched some AEW. My 7-year-old son likes wrestling, but he likes WWE. So we just watched SummerSlam recently. So we'll watch the pay-per-views for WWE. But, mate, I've got WWE Network. And in my downtime, especially when I'm in quarantine or lockdown, I will put on WWE Network. I will go back from the years 85 to 95. I'll watch the WrestleManias, the SummerSlams, the Royal Rumbles. I'll watch them all. I'm slowly going through Saturday Night Main Event from the very first episode. I've done 3 years so far, my last time during quarantine, because that's my era, and I love it, and I still love it. And I just watch it all the time. I love all those characters. Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse the Body. I thought Vince McMahon was also a brilliant commentator that I learned a lot of. And that was my vibe, man. That was my time.
I love it with wrestling now. I mean, AEW is starting to maybe fill the void that WCW left 20 years ago or so. I'm looking around the MMA landscape, and one championship obviously has a gigantic niche, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's its market, in Asia, and it's doing great, and it's starting to make its way stateside as well. They haven't run an event stateside yet. Obviously, there's a pandemic going on and everything. But are you kind of surprised, even taking one out of the picture, that there hasn't been a promotion that's kind of elicited that kind of hardcore response, that love that AEW has gotten as an alternative? It's very weird with MMA. I feel like a lot of people are pro UFC, and nothing wrong with that. They got a lot of great fighters. But, there's some other organizations that are doing pretty well and have some great fighters themselves. I mean, why do you think that's missing?
I'm not surprised, Fred. The thing that I think the problem is that a lot of MMA promotions come. I saw one on my LinkedIn today, and I'd never heard of this promotion, and I won't mention it. I'll save them face. But they said, let's call it XYZ promotion. XYZ promotion is coming. XYZ promotion is going to be the biggest promotion on the planet. It will be bigger than UFC. So sign up now for XYZ promotion. This guy wrote this whole spiel on it, the CEO of XYZ that hasn't even appeared yet. And this is the problem that so many promotions make. Okay, they straight away state they're going to be the biggest. They're going to one day rival the UFC. They're going to go head to head with the UFC, and you can't. I mean, that's never been part of the game plan at One Championship. Another reason why they've been so successful. One Championship's biggest rival is not the UFC. One Championship's biggest rival are the sports that rate higher than they do. Mostly NFL, IPL cricket, EPL soccer, Premier League, Formula One, WWE. That's the biggest rating sports in the world in terms of digital views and in terms of television viewership. They're who Chatri, Sityodtong, and one have always said they want to be bigger than. Never said we want to be bigger than UFC. Are we bigger than the UFC? Hey, in the Eastern Hemisphere, hell yeah. In the Western Hemisphere, of course, UFC is still the king, But you go around Asia and we're on terrestrial TV everywhere. You're not pay-per-view, terrestrial TV. But the problem that so many organizations make is they'll come out and go, yeah, we're head-to-head. We'll be bigger than UFC. Why even put that pressure on yourself? Do your thing. Carve your niche. Make your market. And maybe if you did that, you tried stopping competing against the UFC, you'd make yourself the AEW is to WWE now. You know what I'm saying? But that's the mistake a lot of them fall into, which is why they go under, because they shoot too high too fast with this idea, I've got to beat Dana White, I've got to beat the Fertittas or whoever it may be. But no, that shouldn't be your aim. I think the UFC do a wonderful job. I watch UFC when I get the chance. Why would you ever try and compete directly against that? I mean, I wouldn't make my own soft drink and say I'm going to be bigger than Coca-Cola one day. That's just stupid. But I'll make my own soft drink and say, this tastes bloody good. Go try mine. Go enjoy it. And if you like it, go tell your friends. And if all your friends start buying it, I'll put out more flavors and more flavors. And maybe one day I'll grow big and worldwide too. But I'm not going to come out and say, hey, buy Michael Schiavello Cola. It's bigger and better than Coke. No, it's stupid.
That's right. And I think there is a marketplace out there for another promotion in North America to carve out its own market share. You're not going to put UFC out of business. UFC is like WWE. They're McDonald's. They have so many revenue streams, but you can carve out a niche. You could definitely take some revenue. I mean, AEW is doing great live event business right now. They're doing great key demos.
Fred, it's happening. Bellator does their thing. PFL does their thing. The trick is, though, mate, that there's only a certain pool of talent. That's fighters, right? Only a certain pool you can draw from. What they need to do is organizations, instead of signing, I'm talking about regional, smaller organizations, instead of always signing guys who used to fight in the UFC and building themselves up that way, you've got to start making your own stars, telling your own stories. Find Fred Richani, who's had 5 fights, okay? Put him in your organization and tell us why we should care about Fred Richani. Why do we want to watch Fred Richani fight? Why is he going to be the next big thing? I don't want to hear that Fred Richani used to fight with the UFC and got cut by them. That's why you should watch him, because you saw him in UFC. No. I want to know why. I want to be excited about this guy's future. They need to build grassroots stars, which again, when the regional promotions were on HDNet, we were able to do that for them. So that's another problem at the moment. People have got to build grassroots stars.
The irony here, and I think the NWA, with Mickey James as executive producer, recently ran a very successful all-women show, which I think was called Empower. And then one championship a little afterwards ran an all-women show, not related. You guys didn't copy each other, just happened to be a coincidence, called Empowered. Both tremendous feedback as far as women's wrestling, women's MMA. As somebody that's been calling combat sports for a long time, do you agree with the notion that a lot of the women are not only better at putting on more exciting fights, but also marketing themselves compared to the men? Because I feel like that's the case these days, especially in the social media age with pro wrestling and MMA.
Yes. I think that, how do I put it? Less women dial it in than men when it comes to performance inside the circle, inside the cage, even in boxing, whatever combat sport. The reason being that still in society, women are always striving to, what's the word I'm looking for? To be verified, okay? Always striving to show that they can do it just as well as men who are getting paid more than them in most organizations, most sports, most jobs, etc. So women want that equality. They want to show, hey, I can do it as well as a guy. So there's an inner drive in them, not just as a fighter to get the result, but as a woman to get the result, as a woman to prove that they belong on this stage, in this spotlight, on your TV. They deserve to have your eyeballs watching them. And that's the thing, men don't have that. Because for men, it's like, I've got to prove I'm the world champion. I've got to prove I can beat this guy, but I don't have to do it for all the males in the world. Whereas females is like, I want to be the world champion. I want to beat this woman, but I want to also do it for all the females in the world. And that was empowering women to show what they can do. And I'm so glad we gave that platform for our female athletes to do that. And that's why women, you're right, mostly give more exciting fights than men 9 times out of 10, because they've got an extra point to prove.
Who do you see as being one championship's next breakout star? Can I tell you who I think might be the breakout star, and you can give me your opinion?
Yeah, please.
Based on some social media feedback I've seen, Ritu Phogat.
Yeah, man. Okay. Ritu Phogat was I'm going to go on the record again, and I've done it, so everyone believes me, because Mitch Chilson laughed at me, and Rich Franklin laughed at me, but the voice said Ritu Phogat would win the entire atomweight Grand Prix. I said it months and months and months ago. She had a rough time against Mongbo in the first round. She came back and throttled Mongbo and won it. Ritu is awesome. Big social media following, huge superstar. Only the one loss that I thought was not a loss to BNUN. I thought Ritu beat her. I think Ritu is still undefeated. And she's on her way, I believe, to the final, to winning the whole thing. She comes from a very famous family, for those that don't know. The Phogat family in India, I don't know what comparison I could give in America, but they made it. Two of her sisters, Geeta and Babita, both won Commonwealth Games gold medals, which is huge in wrestling. And they made a movie called Dangal, Dangal, about the Phogat family and the training and what they went through. Their father was their coach. And this movie is the highest grossing Bollywood film of all time. It is also the highest grossing film at the Chinese box office of all time, making it one of the highest grossing films in the world of all time. And it's about Ritu Phogat's family. If you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix. Please watch it tonight.
Can you give us the name of that movie again?
Dangal, Dangal, which is Indian for wrestle, right? Dangal. It is like watching The Karate Kid almost. The way the father trained his daughters, and it's not a documentary, it's a movie. Great acting, superb cast. You'll have to watch with subtitles because it's in I think Hindi. But man, you'll be glued to it. Trust me. And it's about Ritu's family. So I'm just saying, she's got an entire nation who knows who she is because her family is so famous in India, and that's 1 billion people right there. Amazing. So yeah, I agree. Ritu Phogat, I think, is the next big breakout star. Christian Lee, I think so many people keep sleeping on him, and he just handles everyone they put in front of him, handles people. I think he's another big break. He's already a broken out star, but I think he's got the potential to be a major star.
What do you think would have been your alternate career path?
What would have been my ultimate career path if not a commentator, not an architect? That wasn't working out too well. Man, that is so hard. You know what? I might have gone into making shoes. My dad was a shoemaker. I might have taken over the family business. He was a craftsman, making women's shoes when I was young, later men's shoes, dress shoes. I might have gone into the shoemaking business. Yeah, might have done that.
Wow, shoemaker Schiavello.
Yeah.
You've given a lot of advice, dropped a lot of gems, a lot of free game, as the kids would say, about commentary. Is there any other gem that you could drop on us? One piece of advice you could leave the viewers and the listeners with?
Yes. It's a piece of advice I give to all people who are already commentating, podcasting, interviewing, whatever it is, but particularly commentators. Own everything you do. Own it. Make it yours. It comes from confidence. No matter if you're doing a small podcast from your mum's basement, you're hosting a big TV show, you're commentating a regional show at a basketball court that has 50 people there, or a one championship show that has 20,000 people there. When you're on the air, own it, completely own it, make it yours, be in control. You are the quarterback. You are controlling it. Own it. Because if you don't own it, kinks in the armor are going to start to show up, and people will realize it, and they'll pick you out and go, no, that guy hasn't got it. So own it. That's I don't know how better to describe it than just own it. Own it.
Thank you so much, man. OneFC.com. You can check out the commentators wherever books are sold, including, of course, Amazon.com. Michael, where can fans find you online?
You know what? Follow me on Twitter at Schiavello Voice. That's the best place. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm Instagram as well, at Schiavello Voice, Facebook as well. But yeah, guys, I'm really active with my social media. I love to see messages, and I'll message you all back. So yeah, hit me up on Twitter. And you know what? I every now and then I give shout outs on the one shows, on the live shows, and I do that through Twitter. So follow me on there and maybe give you a shout out next show.